Welcome to High Sobriety. Our goal is to save lives and remove the stigma of addiction. Here's the host of High Sobriety, John Mabry.
Hi, welcome to Addiction Campuses High Sobriety podcast. I'm your grateful recovering host, John Mabry. Today on the show, it is really exciting, and I'm a little intimidated, if I'm being honest, to have Andre Norman on the show with us. Now, Andre overcame a dark past full of abuse, illiteracy, prison gang activity, attempted murders. He's seen people raped and hung inside the prison system. He spent 2 years in solitary confinement and one day had an epiphany to set a goal. And he has gone on to school at Harvard. He's spoken at MIT, London School of Business, and multiple countries and higher learning institutions around the country. Welcome to High Sobriety, Andre. It's an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me, John. It's a pleasure being here.
Man, well, so I'm going to just kind of go from andrenorman.com. If you want to go check him out there, I'm going to read a little bit from his bio there. So he travels around the world serving as a mentor and listening ear for those people in need. He's lectured at Harvard, MIT, London School of Business. But before all of that, he went from illiteracy to gang activity. He was once a notorious prisoner gang leader, and he was sentenced to over 100 years in prison. Now, during his 2-year stay in solitary confinement, Andre had an epiphany and was able to begin the process of changing his life. And he has gone from seeing things in prison. He tried to murder people in prison. He has seen rapes and hangings and stabbings and been involved in these types of unthinkable acts for many of us who haven't been in the criminal justice system. But what's great is he's been able to overcome that, and he shares how he does that. And he's going to be able to also talk about the criminal justice system is not something I have a lot of experience about. And so I wanted to have him on to share with our audience. Folks who are struggling with mental health and substance abuse issues oftentimes deal with the legal system and deal with probation and time in prison, and how to navigate that. What's wrong with the system, and maybe what are some improvements that Andre has seen over recent years, and what are some continued improvements that we can do, and what can we at home do to help facilitate better rehabilitating people who are struggling, who are in prison. So, all right, with all that, Andre, hey, again, welcome to the show. I wanted to just open the floor to you to be able to share your story with our audience. Let us know what you're all about.
My story is kind of basic. Grew up in the inner city, single mom, 6 kids. I fell through the cracks. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't good at academics. I wasn't good at athletics. So I just kind of drifted. And I was a kid nobody really could latch on to. I didn't fit any place in particular. So I found a group of people that would take me. And they were the guys that hung out in the street and did crime. And you'd have to be a certain height, a certain weight, have a certain skill set. Just kind of have nothing going on in your life, and they would take you. So I got in with a bunch of people who were doing a bunch of nothing at the end of the day. And it took us from hanging out after school, smoking cigarettes, to robbing people. It kept escalating to the point you find yourself in court. At 12 and 13, it was cute. At 16 and 17, it's called criminal. And they sent me to prison. And I committed the crimes they sent me for, a bunch of robberies. And when I got to prison, what I found, prison is a huge place of all the people who failed at life early, all the people who quit on life early. So all my friends from the dummy class that we used to put us in a room at the end of the hall and close the door. All the kids who couldn't read and write were there. All the kids who got kicked off the football team for anger were there. All the guys whose dads weren't there for them and left them hanging. They couldn't find another coach, another outlet were there. All the kids who smoked weed in the bathroom and drank too much were there. I mean, it was just a big collection and a reunion of all the people who had quit or failed on life early. And I fit right in.
Found your place. Found a place. Found a home. Found connection. Sounds like.
And people wonder why folks go back. Aside from the misery and the dysfunction, the violence, and this craziness of prison, there's no expectation. In society, you're expected to be a straight-A student, to be the high school quarterback, to be the darling lady, to be a size 4, with long wavy hair. There's all these expectations put on people in society, and 98% of people don't fit that. So Madison Avenue is doing a great job of just crushing people's egos and their self-esteem. And a lot of these folks learn to deal with it. And then a lot of folks turn to substances to deal with it. So my mom wasn't there, or I don't feel adequate, I don't measure up, or something happened to me as a child. And people quit. There's so many reasons to quit, but there's only so many places for quitters to go. And most quitters end up self-medicating because it's hard. It's called trauma. Whatever your trauma is, if it's from rape, it's from beatings, if it's from physical or verbal abuse, or just being neglected, whatever created your trauma is now in you. It's like a thing, and that thing just doesn't go away by itself. So
that's awesome. We talk about that quite a bit here on High Sobriety. Talk about trauma early on in life and how I've experienced that myself. How it just changes your psyche. For me, it set in on a cellular level almost. And if you don't process it and you don't deal with it, it just continues to grow and fester, and you find more and more. Ultimately, I found more and more unhealthy ways to cope with that until I finally, got to a place where I could address it and talk about it.
Right.
And now you had some childhood trauma in an instance. I've heard you talk about getting rocks thrown at you when you were in school.
I grew up in Boston, which used to be known as the most racist city in America. I don't know why, because those people must have never been down south. Maybe it's just racism viewed differently in Mississippi. But that was like the saying. It was like a white city. And it was bad. And at one point, all over the country, judges were ordering black kids and white kids to go to school together. And when they signed that order in Boston, the white people protested like they did any place else. You can go to any YouTube channel and just put in black kids being integration of schools, and you see white people outside marching and screaming. Well, in Boston, they did more than march and scream. They stoned the buses. So we'd be on buses coming home, and white kids would drive on the side of the road and throw rocks at us. Now, the funny thing is, I didn't go to a white school. My bus just went to a white neighborhood. So, and that's all that mattered. The black kids on the bus was enough for them. And so at 9 years old, I'm dealing with having people throw rocks and names at me that I'd never heard before. I'd never been called a nigger before. And I never had rocks thrown at me before. So when I went home to my dad and I talked to my dad about it, and I was like, hey, Dad, like, who are these people? Why are they throwing rocks at me? What are these names? He kind of walked away. And what I found out later, my father grew up in Petersburg, Virginia in the 40s. And they threw rocks at him and his brothers. And my granddad told him that's just the way it is. And so he grew up with that trauma. It was probably never resolved. That would happen to his son, and he's just like doubly traumatized. And he didn't know what to do with it, so he walked off, and he left me as a 9-year-old to process. And I don't process well at 9. So my process is not the same as other people's who are adults. I'm a 9-year-old kid. So I processed the whole scenario and came up with a bad algorithm, as you would say, for how am I going to deal with this? Because we create algorithms for how we deal with things. Some people get stressed, they start drinking. Some people get stressed, they start smoking. Some people get stressed, they go to work out. I got stressed, I started hurting people. I started lashing back out at people. And that was like my methodology. And it was bad then. And again, I think of all the federal judges who signed these orders to make America a better place. Not one of them called me, sent me a letter or memo, and asked me if I was in agreement with what I was going to have to go through to make American schools a better place. And they were just like, well, that's just part and parcel of how this goes. And it's like the same thing with addicts. People make decisions and they say, hey, well, this would be good for addicts, or this would be good for this person. And they make all these decisions, but never do they take the time. Say, hey, let's go ask them how they feel about this. And I would argue to say that public schools in America are no better now than they were in the 70s. Just saying.
Mm-hmm. I would love to have our audience hear what is maybe one of the biggest stories or biggest instances in your jail time that stand out to you. I've heard you tell a story of setting out to murder eight guys. Was that one of the biggest ones for you?
No. My biggest my most regretful story in prison is when I went to prison, I was all in. And this is what happens with addicts, and this is what happens with people in just traumatized situations. They go all in and they double down on what's not good for them. So if you're in a bad relationship, you double down. If you're on drugs, you double down. And I was in a traumatized state of I thought I wanted to be a gangster. So I was like doubling down. And to be that, because it's not the normal thing to be. Nobody wants to be an addict. Nobody wants to be a prisoner. Nobody wants to be traumatized. So when you're doubling down on something bad, you're getting like really bad results. And it takes a psychological effect on you. So me wanting to be this huge prison gang leader, that was my quest in life. And so I have to give up some things to get that. If you want to run a marathon, you have to give up steaks, you have to give up McDonald's. You should give up McDonald's anyways, but all this other stuff you have to give up to get that. So to be the prison gang boss that I wanted to be, I had to give up being civil. I had to give up being a family member. I had to give up being like a regular person. And one day I'm in my cell in segregation, and they came and they knocked on my door. I'm like, get away from my door. I don't want nothing from you people. They said, no, you need to come talk to us. I said, what do you want? They said, well, your mother died, and here's the phone. You need to call. I was like, I don't care. Get that phone away from myself. I don't ask for nothing. I was on some, I ask for nothing. Give me what's mine. Don't give me what's not mine. I don't want no extra. I'm a gangster, and all the rest of this madness. So when they came and told me my mother died, they gave me the opportunity to call home. My prison pride said, don't accept the phone because it's not your phone day. Not your mother died, dude, call your family. He was like, no. Prison rules say I have to stay to this little ethical code that doesn't exist. And I waved the phone call off. Then that's when I realized, dude, you got a problem because you love your mother. I tell people I am my mother reborn. But at that moment, when they came in my cell, I was so far into character that I walked away from an opportunity to talk to my mom and talk to my family about what happened to my mom. Now, the truth is, my mother didn't die. My dad had this dumbass plan that if he called the jail and told him that my mother died instead of my grandmother, that somehow they'd let me come to the funeral. And so he never gave me... That's my dad. You know what I'm saying? He had this great idea that he didn't tell anybody about. So he called the jail with his plan. They came to my cell and told me my mother died. And I was like, I don't care. Get away from myself.
Man.
Now, not luckily, but fortunately, it was my grandmother versus my mom. They didn't want either one of them to go. But in that moment, I realized how far I had fallen. And to disregard my mom in that way, just have no emotion and no response to her alleged passing was a sign to me that, Dre, you are so far off base, it's not even funny. And a lot of people out here who are dealing with trauma, dealing with addiction, they don't realize how far off track they are. Until one day they look up, they look in the mirror like I see these meth commercials. They show the person with their first mugshot and they show with the teeth falling out. They don't see that. It's so gradual that they don't see it. Mm-hmm. And my descent into psychological sickness was so gradual that I didn't realize I was that far gone. You couldn't ask me that morning. So what do you think about your mom? I love her to death. So my trauma and my addiction to this lifestyle was so bad that I slipped way off the bridge and didn't even know it.
Man, it's so true, so true. I can completely relate to that, of building up this character that you're I'm performing for everybody else for so long, and that you get deeper and deeper into that character. I mean, if you think of like Heath Ledger, playing the character of the Joker, and he got so into that he, ended up, getting into a unhealthy mindset. He ended up overdosing. And dying by getting so deep into that character. I think so many people do that, and maybe it doesn't lead you to death, but it can lead you to being a person that you never thought that you could be, and it sneaks up on you. Now, what was your
fans? Above the Rim? Was it Above the Rim? What was his song that he went crazy? What was the Tupac movie that Juice? Juice got Tupac, turned him into a gangster.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, what was your turning point? Where did that character begin to break down, or where did the character break down, the most? and what feelings were you having around that time that allowed an openness to consider some change?
Luckily for me, which is unfortunate for a lot of others, I had a goal of being like the number one gangster and gang member in the state of Massachusetts. So when I went from number 20,000, like the last guy in, I made it all the way to number 3. And I had an opportunity to become number 1. And when I got there, it was kind of like I got to see the number 1 slot. I never got that close before. You get to see what it's like to be the boss. And it's kind of like, the best way I can describe it is like the Wizard of Oz. They come on a yellow brick road and they're fighting, Dorothy and the crew. They get all the way to the wizard. They get all the way to the place, and they pull the curtain back. And you see this guy behind this little machine pulling levers, and smoke's coming out of the dragon. It's like, we must listen, and all this other stuff. Like, that's the Wizard of Oz? And I got to that point where I pulled the curtain back, and I saw that's my seat, that I'm trying to get it. I've been fighting this whole way to get in this mythical seat of nothingness. And I was about to become the king of nowhere. That's how I describe it. And I saw it so clear that this is nothing. This is the Wizard of Oz. And Toto just pulled the goddamn curtain back. And now I'm going to be the king of nowhere. And the guy was like, please jump in this seat. I'm tired of this seat. And I realized what it was, and I backed away from that. And I said, I don't want to be the king of nowhere. I don't want to be the king of nothingness. I'm in a prison on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere that nobody cares about, and I'm about to be the king of that. So that's, at that moment, I came to a point of clarity that that's not what I wanted, only when I had a chance to see it. And most people I know who are in struggling situations, they don't have a goal. So the thing that saved me is I had a goal, and I got a chance to see it. Most addicts don't say, hey, I want to sniff a kilo, or hey, I want to see it. They're just out there. So there's no end. I got to my end, and I got a chance to make a choice. And I chose that I didn't want that, and I was able to turn around. So my rock bottom wasn't really rock bottom. It was just like I hit the end of the road. Your
whole prison career, it's like an athlete. You start off as a rookie, and you work your way up the ranks, and you
I put in a lot of work.
I
put a lot of hours into that.
Like,
that was like an overnight success. That was 24 years of hard work.
And it's not like a business sense, like, hey, I went to the office every day and we killed the competition, year after year. We kept beating the competition. You were fighting for your life.
We beat up. Hell yeah. I wasn't fighting for my life. I don't like to tell people I was in fear and I was like being like intimidated. The stuff I was doing was not necessary to survive in prison. The stuff I was doing was necessary to become the boss of prison. There's a difference. There are some people who fight to stay alive and fight for their protection and the rest of that. And there was those of us who fight for a reputation in the slot. So, and I was fighting not for survival or defense of myself. I was fighting for a mythical stature that didn't exist anyplace else but in this mythical world of prison.
Doubling down on your drug of choice. That's what a lot of addicts do. I can relate to that. Doubling down on something that's hurting me, but I don't know any other way out. How did you get out of that? How did you get from number 3 in the prison system out of 20,000 to Harvard and speaking at MIT, London School of Business? What did you do?
I got to the point where I realized that I didn't want to be that. And we all have our epiphany moments where we realize that we're off track. And the worst thing that we could do, the worst thing that I did, is I ran to my friends and said, you know something? I want to be something different. I want to be successful. I want to go to college. I came up with this great plan to go to college and be successful. And I did the worst thing humanly possible. I tried to tell all my friends. And when they wouldn't listen to me, I tried to tell my family. And they wouldn't listen to me. And I was sitting back in my cell, disjointed and like upset that nobody wanted to support my plan. And I came to an understanding that day that I'd never come before. God, or my higher power, gave me a plan for my life. He didn't give me a plan. I wasn't Moses. He didn't give me a plan for the people. He gave me a plan for me. And I tried to act like I was Moses and take it to the people. And no, the plan was for me. The understanding was for me. The journey was for me. And I was so entrenched in trying to bring everybody with me, that's why it wasn't working, because it wasn't for everybody. So I had to kind of like not walk away, but refocus myself on who the plan was for. I'm so used to being in a gang with all the guys and a family and a band and or something. It's a team-oriented thing. This wasn't a team thing. This was an Andre thing. And that was the hardest thing to accept. This is just for me for right now. So I went back to school, got my GED. I went to the law library, taught myself the law, reversed my case on appeal, went to anger management. I had a slight anger management problem. And I just spent the next 8 years working 20 hours a day on me. I didn't work on the team. I didn't work on my mom or my sister. I didn't work on my cousins. I worked on me. I focused on me solely. And I tell people, self-care is not selfish. And I did self-care for 8 straight years, 24 hours a day. And it eventually got me out of prison and on track to the places I wanted to go in the world. So I went out of prison, left the prison, went to the parole office, then went to a youth center. 90 minutes after I got out, I was standing in front of like 12 little black boys. I said, you're going to jail, not because you're black, not because you smoke weed, not because you're in a gang. You're going to jail because somebody's let you down, somebody's hurt you, and you don't know how to process your feelings or your emotions. So you self-medicate and you act out. And I'm going to teach you how to process your emotion and how not to act out in a violent way, but how to act out in a pro-social way. I started teaching people emotional wellness and trauma. Day one, 90 minutes after I got out. And I've been doing groups for the last 19 years all over the world.
Yeah, that's such
on
a
that
huge
basic concept.
Dude, that's such a huge part of recovery is giving back. But before you can give back, before you can give to other people, you've got to be able to take care of yourself. I love the lesson you just pointed out, that self-care is not selfish. I mean, to be able to take 24 hours a day, sometimes just for yourself for 8 years, that's what it took. Our attention spans of folks these days is just so short, but I think you're giving people hope. I mean, that's why they call you the ambassador of hope. We're talking with Andre Norman here on High Sobriety, the ambassador of hope, spending 8 years of his life, 20 hours a day, working on himself so that he can now go and have spent the last 19 years educating and serving other people.
And I'll tell you this, one of the huge reasons I do and work with addiction populations, I'm not a drug addict, I'm not a drinker. I say, Dre, why do you care so much and you spend all this time on addiction? And why you want to help all these people? When I was inside and I wanted to turn my life around, I said, okay, I'm an angry black man. I'm in jail. I'm violent. I'm out of control. I walked down to the counselor's office and I said, hey, she said, what's up? I said, I need the angry black man class. She said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm an angry black man. Where's the class? She said, what are you talking about? I said, you have 1.2 million black people locked up. Where's the angry black man class? She says, we don't have it. It doesn't exist. And I was like, get out of here. I said, well, what about the angry white guy class? She said, there's no such class. So I'm like, I was baffled how you can have 1.2 million people locked up who you say are angry and there's no angry black man class. Well, I ended up going to NA in the AA. And I would substitute anger or drugs for anger. And I would substitute drinking for anger. I read Big Book, and I substitute their stories for my stories. And the NA and the AA community embraced me. They didn't say, hey, man, you don't have a substance abuse problem, so you can't be in here. They said, you have an addiction problem. Yours is just the bad decisions into the violence. And the NA and the AA community embraced me, and they took me in, and they taught me how to process my emotions and how to process my thinking using the 12 steps, using Big Book, using all the different tools that they use. And that's why I'll never forget my brothers who were inside. Most of them were white. And they said, hey, Dre, man, we're all in this together. And they embraced me. So when I came home, I do prison reentry work, I do gang work, but I definitely do addiction work because it's the addiction people who gave me my start.
Dude, that's awesome. I think, so yeah, if somebody's afraid, somebody out there is afraid that their addiction or their issue isn't relevant, just get into a meeting. Try some meetings out.
The meeting doesn't have to necessarily be for your drug of choice. The meeting is how to process your emotions. So it's, hey, I don't drink. Well, I don't drink. But you just substitute drinking for whatever your problem is. Mm-hmm. And you go to NA, you substitute that for whatever your problem is. Everybody, I mean, there's no niche programming just for you. And I would think the prison system would create the Angry Black Man class. They just haven't seen fit yet. But aside from waiting for that, you can wait for a class that's never coming, or you can take a class that's there and it works. You just have to make some adjustments.
Yep, and have an open mind. You know, I think a lot of it is you got to have openness and willingness to try something new. Is what you're doing right now working for you? And if not, are you willing to try something new? You know, I've been to Heroin Anonymous meetings. I've never done heroin, never touched heroin. I've never seen heroin in person. I have no idea what it, you know, what its effects would do on me. But I can go to a Heroin Anonymous meeting and get, you know, a lot out of that. But because I'm just willing to be around a group that helps me stay sober for one day at a time.
Yeah, I grew up watching the Brady Bunch, and I thought I was Peter Brady because my mom had 6 kids. And I never thought I was white, but I just identified with Peter. So Peter was my guy. He was the middle boy, I was the middle boy, so me and Peter were best friends. I never met him. So you can attach yourself to what you want to. You just have to if you want to be better, there's a way. And there are people doing better. So you have to get in where you can fit in for the time being. And then when you get to where you need to be, create the thing that wasn't there for you. And that's what I do now. I create the thing that wasn't there for me. But my teachings and my philosophy line up with all that's been taught already. And I add my nuances to it. But people just need to say, you know something, stop debating it, stop wondering, just go get help. I mean, the most important thing you can do is do something. Stop talking about it. Stop making excuses. Stop coming up with justifications. And just try it. What's the worst case that happens? You learn how to process your feelings. Okay, that's the worst case that happens.
Mm-hmm. Man, this has been incredible talking with Andre Norman. Man, looking at it, so double down on your drug of choice. And you've got to get to a point where I got to a point where I had to double down on recovery, where recovery had to become my drug of choice. You know, if I'm doubling down on, you know, finding the drug dealer, doubling down on harmful things for me and my family, am I willing to double down on the other side and do something better for myself? You know, Andre's been able to share with us going into the mythical nothingness. He was a notorious prison gangster leader, and he rose from 20,000 people in the prison system in Massachusetts to number 3. And he saw the number 1 guy, and he saw that there was nothingness behind the curtain. So Andre was striving to be the king of nowhere, and today he is the ambassador of hope. You can find out more about his classes, his groups, his speaking schedule, things of that nature, AndreNorman.com. Andre, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, and how else can our folks find you and connect with you?
Well, the one thing I want to say is collaboration is everything. I was out in Phoenix or Tempe, Arizona a few months back. I met a wonderful guy named Joe Polish from the Genius Network.
Oh, yeah.
And he's the number 1 mastermind leader in the world. And we connected around addiction and addiction support. And he has a program called Genius Recovery. And Genius Recovery is trying to bring a new lens and a new vision to how you treat addicts with humane care, not trying to lock our way up out of the system or bullying people into treatment that doesn't make sense. So sitting with Joe and the Genius Network, and he's given me a whole new framework on how to actually see from an addict's perspective, because he's a former addict, how it actually impacts them, not just doing the work, but doing the work with more humane care and more thinking of the end person. So I've been teaming up with Joe Polish and the Genius Recovery Network for the last 6 to 8 months. And we're going around the world just doing interventions, doing care. So you definitely want to look up Genius Recovery. There's a lot of good stuff there. Joe Polish, great guy. He's 1,000% committed, and he's bringing, people don't even know that he's teaching the brightest and the best around the world. And every event he does, anything he does, he includes addiction. So you have the smartest and the brightest being introduced to the addiction concept and the addiction world from the standpoint of we need to come up with solutions and better treatments and better avenues to making this thing grow that people get healed. So if you want to look it up on AndreNorman.com is not the thing. I want you to look up Genius Recovery. and Genius Network, because that's where that collaboration is everything. So you have this master marketing guy, that's this ex-gang leader, but we have one common cause, like everybody else. We want to see people healed and treated fairly in the process. So I've teamed up with Joe and Genius Network and Genius Recovery to bring this message to a larger audience. So it's not a black thing or a white thing, a corporate thing or a city thing. It's a human thing. And sitting with Joe, listening to him and hearing his views and his journey, it's amazing. So I definitely want people to look that up and look for us there.
Excellent. Yeah, I've heard of Joe Polish's work. I've seen some of that.
It is the Miracle Morning Addiction Recovery, letting go of who you've been for who you can become. Joe Polish, Anna David, and Hal Arad.
Excellent. Thanks for giving our audience, tipping us off to that. Well, hey, it's been an honor to have Andre on High Sobriety with us today. Check out Andre Norman on Instagram or online. And thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an honor talking with you. God bless you, and keep up the amazing work that you're doing.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to High Sobriety. If you or a loved one are struggling with an addiction, we can help. Call our hotline at 844-888-HELP. That's 844-888-4357. Don't wait. Call today, 844-888-HELP. High Sobriety is an Addiction Campuses podcast.